Hi guys, welcome to this video, and this video is going to be about this bad boy here, the Lancair Legacy. It's an add-on I've owned for probably about two and a half months now, and alongside the A2A Cessna 182, it is well, it's one of my two favourite general aviation aircraft. I do say that on the proviso that this is single-engined. I do have others in the multiple-engined varieties that I really enjoy, but in terms of single engine GA, it's this and the Cessna 182 from A2A. Now, at this point, I feel like I've been stealing stuff, and I feel like I've committed theft. This thing is sold on RealAir's website at the princely sum of €25, £17 of sterling. I don't know what it is in dollars. I do apologise, I haven't converted it. But that, by any stretch of the imagination, is a cheap add-on for an aircraft. Let's not mess around. That's cheap. When you look at the price of some of the stuff that's out there, that's cheap. Now, the question then comes with that. Well, what do you get for your money? Now, I have not previously had much contact with RealAir in terms of their aircraft until I bought two, and I bought the two on recommendation. I bought this one and I bought the RealAir Duke, and I shall shortly be trying to get hold of the RealAir Duke turbine, purchasing that when I've got the money available to do so. The reason why I'll be buying it is on the basis of the other two aircraft I've had. The RealAir stuff is absolute quality in terms of their GA stuff. This is the Legacy, as I say. The Legacy is, I think in the US it's experimental category, and I think in the UK it's what's known as a kit plane. And it is exactly what it says on the tin. Basically, people go out, they spend extortionate amounts of money, tens of thousands of pounds, to go and buy the largest matchbox kit in the world. They then sit themselves down for 9 to 12 months, they build themselves an aircraft, and then they get it tested by the PFA, and then they go out and fly it, or the Light Aircraft Association, or whatever they are in the UK now. It used to be the PFA, I don't know what they call themselves now, possibly the same. But that means, as with a lot of these sort of aircraft these days, they are of composite construction, which means that this is a laminated sections of fiberglass or carbon fiber woven cloth and all sorts. But that's why you get such a smooth texture. This isn't because the designers have decided not to do anything with it. It's because in real life these things are slippery. They're like a tadpole, very difficult to get hold of. Now, there are panelled sections, obviously, where you would need access to stuff. So the obvious one is on top of the engine, but if you were to have a look at other areas, let's go down towards the tail. You can see the access panel there for where the elevator tube is. There's another one on the other side. There's access panel here for the rudder trim tab, and so on and so forth. So it does have the access panels. It's just, given the nature of the aircraft, there aren't that many, and there aren't that many joins. Now, it does have 3D recessed elements like the port here for the cockpit air, and it does have this sort of recessed line running around. But in terms of exterior detailing, I have to say it's really quite good, because you can actually see, if I just move the camera around a bit with my rather ropey easy dock skills, you can see quite far into the engine there, into the engine bay. You can see it's all 3D. You can see all the cooling fins in there. You can see there's very nice close fit round the prop here. Lovely lighting effects off the prop. Now, this is FSX steam, by the way. It's not P3D. For two reasons. Firstly, I don't own the P3D version of this aircraft, only the FSX version. And secondly, my theory is if it looks good in steam, then it's going to look even better in P3D, which I think is a fairly simplistic viewpoint, but nonetheless, it's what I'm sticking with. But you can see the glory with which the light is shining off the surfaces. So let's have another look at the surfaces in regards to a couple of bits. The first bit is this canopy. When you look at this canopy from the outside, it looks like it's had palm prints and hand prints and all sorts of mucky paw prints all over it. But as you move around with the light, you can see that both the translucency, the transparency of the canopy, and also the dirt effects on it changes completely. Very, very clever, very, very nice. Makes you feel like there is an actual solid object of a canopy there, and that it is well used. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they've added a lot of wear and tear to the aircraft that isn't immediately visible. These things cost a lot of money, so the owners tend to look after them with quite a lot of pride and joy. But still, you get this mucky effect around some of the panels, particularly those panels where they're prone to either sort of, if you like, the erosive or abrasive effects of things, or bug splatters all the way down here. Look, all down the wing leading edge. They're all around the engine nacelles. And then if you go into the prop, and you can go quite close, if I zoom instead of using Easy Dock, you can see around here where it's got the dirt along the edge of the propeller here from hitting things and striking things, and it's got marks and texture on the propeller. Really, really nice. Really nice. You know, lovely exterior modelling. So if you like, that's the top half. The other thing to be aware of is compound curves. Now, compound curves, they're difficult enough to model. You know, I wouldn't like the challenge of modelling one, but when you look at the lighting effect on here, if I move left and right, you can see the lighting effect on this complex curve here, where it's a multiple series of curves. So you can see the light cutting in nicely. You know, it's not got sharp edges to the lighting. It's beautiful the way it runs around the curves of the aircraft. And as I say, you've got a lovely highlight line here. You can see it running all the way down with the lighting. Beautiful. So they've done a really nice with the shaping of this thing. So few other things. This shows the quality of what we're looking at here. When you look at the trim tab here for the rudder trim, you can see there's a gap here, and the gap is the tarmac on the other side. So they've left gaps top and bottom. It would have been, it would have been fairly easy for them to have just gone, oh, you know what, stuff it. Nobody's going to really notice, but they've left the gap there. Very nice. Simple little things like on the inside of the rudder. It would have been very easy just to have a blank texture there, but when you look into it, you can see they've actually put texture there as well. So, even the rudder is actually textured. And really, this is an indicator as to how good this thing is for me. This thing is really testing. This thing is really testing my Easy Dock skills, trying to get into all the nooks and crannies where I want to show you what I know or what I've seen. Like the undercarriage legs. Look at the texturing effects there in the dirt, and you've got it all around the inside of the wheel well cover. You've got it all over the oleo. It looks weathered and tired and beaten and battered, and then you've got this lovely fine detail of these struts for the actual bay door here. Lovely braided brake line look. Absolutely gorgeous. Nice texturing on the tyres. Michelin tyres. Really good texturing on the brake pads and brake discs, brake calipers, Richard, brake calipers, not brake pads and brake discs. You'd be quite impressive if you could see those. And again, same sort of thing on the nose wheel. Lovely texturing. That brush texturing looks really good. And then the horrible mucky type of event around the nose wheel. And of course, one of the joys of Easy Dock is the ability to actually go in and have a look, and you can see the texturing and the model construction in here that's gone on in terms of all of the various control arms, and really nice. So there we are. That's the outside. For me personally, they've done an absolutely spot on job. These are small things I would hasten to add. The only thing is occasionally you get to things like the light here. Now, the lights are really nice generally. Let me just go out to the wingtip and I'll show you what I mean. So here's your port nav light and here's your port strobe light. Now, the strobe light is really nice because when I look at it, I can see that they've put a lot of time and effort into this bit here being light and this bit here being the translucent cover, the protective cover. And then obviously your nav light. Great think sight. And then you get to some of the textures, and some of the textures on the wing surfaces aren't, that's, considering the level of detail in the rest of the aircraft, that's just basically the fuel filler flap as a straightforward bitmap image. It's not really doing the rest of the aircraft the justice it deserves. But there's some really lovely features. So although this is where the landing lights are, You can see there's no screws per se, but you do have a lovely 3D Perspex cover. You've got an inside area that's modelled, and the lights are 3D as well. So all things considered, I actually think that it's an exceptionally good external model. There's a few things that are there if you look deeply enough, but really I'm being hyper picky. Really being hyper picky. As I say, the overall look of this thing is just pure gorgeousness. It's oozing with gorgeousness when you look at it, and the lighting effects. And as I say, this is FSX Steam. This is not P3D, where I would suspect it's going to be even more impressive. So let's pop inside and have a look round the cockpit and see how we get on. Beautiful, isn't she? Beautiful in here. Look at this. Glorious. Lovely texturing of leather. The DA40 and DA42 grobs are very similar inside. Very similar in terms of the seating and the stick between the legs, and makes you feel a bit like a fighter pilot when you've got this, except on the left hand side you end up flying with your hand on the throttle on the right and your stick in the left, which for me took a bit of getting used to. It's not quite your A10, but there we go. Right, canopy first. We highlighted outside just how good it looked and shiny and everything. But then when you look inside, you've got all of the same sort of bug splat effects, and that streaking that you get from flying through rain and weather and dust and dirt. Looks awesome. Looks awesome. And it changes depending on where the sun is. So you can see here, there's virtually nothing to see. But as you come round to where the sun is, you can see it lights up like a candle. It's really marked depending on the positioning. And then on top of that, you've got this lovely sort of reflection of the combing coming around here. Now you will also notice that it depends on where you are in the cockpit, because this bit is visible, this half less so. You can just faintly see it. So the actual texturing, the 3D environment, everything, gorgeous. I really cannot emphasize how much gorgeousness there is in terms of the visual bling, is a phrase that I tend to use quite a bit. So all the controls are animated obviously in here. You can see them all move, so you know they all work. So at this point it's worth having a look at the cockpit. Now this, as I say, this is an experimental or PFA aircraft. Consequently, that means that the owners tend to fit out the interiors as they see fit. Everything from different coloured seats to carpets to different sticks to different control configurations in terms of whether they have vernier throttles or whatever it may be, but they can pretty much, as long as it fits within the certification of that type, they can pretty much do what they want. And that means that they can pretty much do what they want with this. Now this is an old set of steam gauges. This is what you would find in everything from a Cessna 152 onwards. With your normal 6-pack of instruments. The only exception to that is that given its propensity as a long-distance high-speed tourer, 2-seat tourer, it does have an HSI. Can't understate how important that is when you're trying to do single-pilot IFR. Nav2's over here, obviously capable of full ILS with glide slope and localizer. Your battery of GPS up here, and comms and radios, engine instruments over here, and there's a couple of other quirks which we'll talk about. But you've got the basic 6. Now I am going to mess around with my Easy Dock again, because there's something I really want to demonstrate that I think is really special. Not only is the panel 3D, you can see it's got 3D dimensions here. Not only are the knobs and switches 3D, which is great, and we're used to that now, but allow me to show you this. The gauges are 3D. And what I mean by that is, if you look at some of these gauges, yes, you've got the raised bezel, but look at the needle, it's curved. When you look at it from in front, it's flat. When you look at it from here, you can see it's got a definite curve on it, consistent with the real aircraft. Beautiful. You can see down here where the ball is, the turn coordinator slip ball. It's got a nice 3D effect. The little flag is recessed up here. And you've also got a parallax error if you look at where the ball is compared to the tube. I hate EasyDock sometimes. And then this is my favourite. This has got to be my favourite. It's one thing to have a 3D instrument where you can see the instrument proud of the panel and the screws that hold it there. And then you've got the bezel, which is great. And then you've got the first layer, 3D layer in the instrument. Then you've got the second 3D layer. Then you've got the third one, which is a moving 3D layer for bank angle. Then you've got the fourth one, which is the pitch ladder. Then you've got the fifth layer behind, which is the horizon. This instrument alone has several 3D layers. How awesome is that? I mean, really, that is taking things to the extreme. Glorious. It really adds to the aircraft. Now, when I did the 182 video for A2A, I mentioned the fact that I was slightly disappointed it came with the bog standard default FSX GPS. This comes with the bog standard default FSX GPS as well, but this is £17. So it's very hard to be critical of something that where they've basically said the FSX GPS will do us fine, thank you very much, we'll spend our money developing other bits of the aircraft. And with this add-on, I'm really glad they did that, because the rest of the add-on sings. Now, I've come to accept that whilst it's got limitations, actually the default GPS isn't actually too desperately bad, because if you use a program like Plan G, you can actually put in relatively complex flight plans. And yeah, it flies them. It does exactly what you want. You know, it's okay, but more importantly, it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's easy, even using the default flight planner, but particularly if you go and use something like Plan G, which is from Tazware, for VFR flight planning. You can do it from instrument, but it's really not good at showing the controlled airspace boundaries in the UK. So if you use that, then you get a very good effect in terms of looking at the sort of lie of the land before you then plan your route. You can plan your route. It shows you a lot of things in terms of the route itself. And then you can just upload it straight away. You can put it straight into your... It saves in a compatible format to FSX's default flight plans. And you can just plug it straight into this, load it straight in, and you load it through the flight planner. Makes it nice and slick and easy, and you know, I'm not going to go out and buy another GPS for this aircraft. There just really isn't any need. I'm just going to stick with the one I've got. Talking about GPSs, you will have noticed by now the dust on the screens. Fantastic, really nice. And you can see with the angles here and the finger sweeps, you know, they haven't just put speckled dust on the screens. This is where somebody's obviously had their grubby mitts on the screen trying to clean the dust off the GPS and the engine instruments. Now, the engine instruments are one of the main concessions to technology in this aircraft, but there's a couple of other bits that stand out. So yeah, the instruments look good, they work very well. Everything here looks and works really well. You will notice as I flash my cursor over things that you get little flash ups where it says plus. If you want, I'm not going to do it because I've got EasyDock installed, but if you want and you haven't got EasyDock installed, you just click on where it's got a plus and it zooms in on that particular instrument or cluster of instruments or whatever it may be. So anyway, a couple more things. Here's your elevator trim. Your rudder and aileron trim are down here. This, by the way, is absolutely spot on. The aircraft I've flown which have this sort of fuel cock, you lift this bit up here on the top, this circular bit, and then it kind of lifts the pin with it, which allows you to turn it left, right, both, or off. Really spot on. They've nailed the colour and everything, the texture, the colour, the font, brilliant. So anyway, where were we? Elevator trim is a series of green LEDs, or a series of LEDs, I should say, that move up and down. This instrument here and this instrument here give a clue as to the secret life of this aircraft. The secret life of this aircraft is it does have the ability to do some aerobatics. It is not a pitch special, but it can do some aerobatics, hence the fact that it is fitted with a G meter that goes up to plus 10 G. You won't get there without breaking the aircraft, and it goes to minus 6 G, minus 5 G. if you get to -5G, you will be needing medical attention, one would have thought, having burst your eyeballs with blood, but there we go. Now, one of the complexities of this is normally used for single pilot IFR, and GPS approaches can be done in certain areas, and it generally uses a thing called WAAS, Wide Area Augmentation System, which basically is a system by which the GPS approaches can in effect test themselves for their integrity, so that you're not relying on inaccurate GPS data and GPS information. So basically what you end up with is kind of a satellite. In addition to the satellites floating around in the atmosphere, you end up with almost with a pseudo ground-based satellite, which can then be used by the system to interrogate the accuracy of itself. But that's WAAS. To the best of my knowledge, it's years since I did the exams, so I don't really remember exactly how it works. But generally in the UK, you wouldn't find that many GPS approaches. I know it's common in other parts of the world, but not in the UK. In the UK, they have a strange fascination for this beast over here, the NDB, ADF NDB. So the ADF indicator or instrument for the NDB, the non-directional beacon used for navigation. Now the NDB is literally just a beacon that radiates waves. It does have an identifier, but it just literally, it's like a big light bulb, I suppose, is the best way of describing it. Doesn't matter which way you look at it from, all you see is the light bulb. The light bulb doesn't know where you are. It's just you can point yourself at the light bulb. And that's what this does. And we have a number of NDB approaches in the UK that can be a bit tricky. Now, let's imagine for a moment you are flying on instruments and you've got your 6-pack here and you've got your scan going. Scans can be two sorts. You can get a radial, a circular scan like this, where you're constantly circling the instruments, or you can do a spoke pattern, which is a common one. It's the one I generally use more than anything. So you focus on your one key performance indicator, which is your attitude indicator, and then you flick outwards like the spokes of a wheel. And you generally want to monitor your airspeed, your altitude, and your navigational lateral navigation. And then occasionally what you'll do is you'll add in these two instruments. It's worth noting actually that the altimeter, generally speaking, is quite accurate at determining when you're going into a climb and descent. Sometimes you get a lot of lag in VSI's, vertical speed indicators. So occasionally this is actually more accurate at warning you when you're starting to climb and descend, because it will quite often respond sooner. There is a thing called a IVSI, instantaneous vertical speed indicator, which also has a couple of gadgets inside, but that's by the by. Anyway, you've got your 6 instruments here. You're concentrating. Your head's on fire. You're struggling to keep the navigation going, but this is an NDB approach. So in amongst all your scan, you've got to look to the far side of the cockpit for this, and you'll notice there's a parallax error in terms of the visual effect. Not a problem with the flight simming world, because we can just do this and go, oh yes, it's doing that. But in real life, you're looking across that thing and you've got to take account of the parallax error. So, but that's nothing to do with RealAir in terms of a problem. That's RealAir simulating real life. And when you look at the panel space available here, there's just nowhere to put it, because you've got nav1, nav2, and your ADF. There's just nowhere to put it. There is no room. And this is one of the things with a small general aviation aircraft. It's very easy to run out of panel space. People spend a long time deciding on their panel layouts for aircraft, because once it's made, it's made. You know, there's no real changing it. The only exception to that is you can potentially get glass screen panels put in here, but they're very expensive. And so yeah, interesting cockpit, interesting aircraft. The thing to do now is to get it started, get airborne, and get flying. Right, let's throw this thing at the air and see how we get on. Now, a couple of comments that have been made previously. One relates to why I don't often use the checklist. Now, I don't often use the checklist because what I want to do is focus on what is pertinent to that particular flight. So when I did a video about the constant speed unit, I'm not overly concerned about all of the elements of the checklist. I'm only concerned about the bits that appertain to that particular tutorial. However, seeing this is a review, I might as well go through the checklist because they're relatively simple. Well, they're very simple with this aircraft. The other thing people have mentioned is why I don't always have the RPM gauge in view. Well, it's largely irrelevant with this because it's here and you can see it's in my view that I've set up with EasyDock. However, there's quite often, even in real life, they took the RPM gauge well out of the way because you only look at it occasionally. It's not like your main performance instruments in your 6-pack here. You only look at it occasionally. So again, I don't want to focus on things that are, if you like, on the periphery of what's going on. So what I am going to do is I'm going to go through the pre-flight checks before we get airborne. And here we go. So the parking brake is on. You can see it down here. All switches are off. Landing gear switch is down. Battery switch is going on. The VM1000C goes through its test routine, and one of the things you're looking for is that it's checking every single LED is working, and then it sorts itself out. It goes to the manifold pressure, which is the ambient pressure, the outside air. Now this is not a turbocharged aircraft, so the amount of air that goes into the cylinders is based on the outside air pressure. People get carried away with the idea of sucking. Sucking is a difficult sort of concept in some respects, but when you've got the engines going on a non-turbocharged engine, it's still just the fact that you've got higher ambient air pressure than you've got in the cylinder, that the air wants to rush from the high pressure to the low pressure. So ultimately the amount of air that goes into the engine is limited by the outside air density, which again is limited by the atmosphere, and therefore whatever the manifold pressure is at the maximum, it will be the outside ambient air pressure. So at the moment it's 29.6 outside, which is that's perfectly good, but you'll see as we climb this reduces and you'll never get it near the red line in most circumstances, but there we go. RPM, these lights are flashing because the engine's off. Fuel is what we expect. 23.7 volts. You will see that count down as the battery drains, and we're drawing 5 amps at the moment. So VMC we've done. Fuel quantity is checked. Annunciator warning lights. Now, a little thing that I was when I did my multi-crew cooperation course, it's important that the crew understands everything that's going on in terms of the warnings, particularly when you start an aircraft up, a complex aircraft. You get all sorts of beeps, bleeps, warnings and everything as it tests various things. When one of you's going through testing various things and you start to get alarms and buzzers, etc., you need to tell the other pilot that it is expected. And so quite often what you'll see is that somebody will do a test, the alarms and the lights go off, and you'll hear one pilot tell the other that it's expected. The second thing is, once this light is on and flashing, the only reason you know there's a change, well, you don't know if there's a change in these. So let's say, for example, we're in a descent and we have the gear up, flaps up, and we reduce our power completely. This light comes on as a master warning light to say, hang on a minute, you haven't got your gear down, because it assumes you're going into land. What then happens is you'll obviously get this flashing and you'll get a gear warning light over here. However, if you had an engine fire or something overheated, obviously you get another caption up here, but you've still got this light flashing and you didn't cancel it, so you don't get any indication there's a new warning. So one of the things that is good practice in my mind to get into is every time you've got a warning comes up, confirm what the warning is, confirm what you're going to do about it, but more importantly, cancel this so that if you get a new warning, you get a new flashing light, and then that way you don't get anything that's hidden. So that's just something that I do and I think is a positive thing to do. You can see the battery's going down, 23.4. We'd better get started in a moment. Trim tabs set to 0, altimeter is set. So before start, canopy closed and locked, harness and rudder pedals are adjusted, flight controls full and free movement. You'll just see the rudder pedals moving down there as I do that. Circuit breakers are all in, fuel selector is to both, as you can see there. So the engine start itself, fuel boost pump goes on, that little red one there. Throttle goes about 1/4 of an inch open, so about there. Prop control fully forward, mixture fully forward. And we're going to start now. Now as you see the cockpit shake around, actually before we do that we'll go alternator on and the oil pressure is up. That'll start to warm up as well. Very important because most GA aircraft, if your oil pressure isn't up within 30 seconds, you perform an immediate shutdown. And the fuel boost pump can go off for a bit now. Right. Just bring the RPM back whilst we warm up. We're looking for 1,000 to 1,100 really. Don't want to thrape the engine to bits. Right. Now you'll notice that we're vibrating and moving. Misses fnar fnar, and the wingtip's a good place to see it. This is not EasyDock. although I've got Easy Dock turned on, I've got all the movement set up for Easy Dock turned off. I don't particularly like it. I think the head movement in Easy Dock is excessive, and I just don't particularly like it. I know a lot of people like it because it adds to the immersion, but for me it's just a bit over the top. It's very rare I've been in an aircraft where it throws you all over the place like you're in some sort of tumble dry. Anyway, that's just a personal thing. So the alternator's on, oil pressure's rising, volts and amps checked, lights as required. We'll pop the nav lights on, and whilst we're on the runway we'll put the landing lights and the strobes on. We will then put the avionics masters on. We'll turn the avionics on while we're at it. That's all on. We'll turn that to standby, although we're not actually going to use it, and turn that on. So that's all good to go. The speed brakes, by the way, they're electronic, but they're all or nothing. There's no intermediate position. You can see with the switch it's just a 2-position switch. So thank you very much for that Easy Dock. I don't quite know what's gone on there. Bizarre, but there we go, never mind. So radios and GPS are all on, warm up at 1000 to 1200 RPM. So this doesn't have persistent modelling to the same extent. Well, I don't believe it has much in the way of persistent modelling compared to A2As. So when you get back into the aircraft after you've had a previous flight, it's not quite so dramatic. So what we will do in the meantime is we'll tune this up, and we're looking at 3635. That should give us an ADF reading. There we go. The other ADF is on here, but I'm not going to get too carried away with that. So that's pretty much us ready to go, to be fair. What I will do in the meantime is I will set this so that I've got my runway orientation, which helps me out in terms of just if you're flying around, it gives you an idea as to what the orientation of the runway is, just so that you've got something to reference when you're looking for the orientation when you come back to the airfield. Okay, so we would at this point taxi. We're not going to taxi because we're obviously already at the runway. So the parking brake is set, throttle 1500 RPM, and a little bit more there. RPM is very sensitive, so we're going to check the governor now. So pull it out, expecting the RPM to settle, which it does at the new RPM. Push it back in, RPM settles again at your original setting. Pull it out, check that it's the same as the previous one, push it back in, check it's gone back, pull it out. The reason for this is to cycle the oil in the constant speed unit, and basically what you're looking to do is to get some fresh warm oil into the prop, so that A, you can check the constant speed unit is working, and B, you know it's going to work when you need it. So magnetos now, looking for a 50 RPM max differential here, and a maximum of 175 drop, so they're fine. In fairness, with most FSX stuff you don't expect any problems. T's and P's are within limits. Throttle setting, go to idle. It's important that the engine can idle properly, because the last thing you want is an engine that's developing power when you're coming into land. And there we go, trim set for takeoff, parking brake release before takeoffs, autopilot's checked off, prop controls fully forward, mixture fully forward, canopy check secure, it is harness tight. Odd thing with this is canopy wise, obviously you can't open it, there's no handle, so yes, it is secure. So before takeoffs we will put the fuel pump on. Generally aircraft like this have two fuel pumps. They have a mechanical one as part of the aircraft itself, but they also have a backup of an electrical one. So away we go, full power. No idea what the wind is, generally can't be bothered to check a lot of the time. Seems to be coming from the right, so we're trying to weathercock to the left. I'm having to put some right pedal in. Now the VR speed normally is 65 for this, but I tend to find it doesn't want to fly off the ground until about 90-95. You can see fairly firm push, or sorry, pull on the stick to get us off the ground there. So touch the brakes, gear up. Although most gear bays do have skids so that the wheels stop rotating, because when you come off the ground they rotate very quickly, but most gear bays have like a skid so that when the wheels retract you do get a kind of a braking effect on them to stop them rotating. But it's a good idea just to dab the brakes as you pull the gear up. So the best climb for rate of climb, the best speed is 135, so we'll just let it adopt that speed. We'll come back onto the heading we took off on, which is particularly bad of me. Now the speeds in this thing, they're very good. It's a very, very quick tourer. We have already found that. So what I am going to do now, whilst we're stable at 135, I'm just going to bring the prop back a bit. So if you remember, we rev up and throttle back. So first thing I've got to do here is throttle back a bit. So we'll come back to about 24 inches and we'll bring our revs back to about 25 inches. And that'll take some stress off the engine. So there we go. Now one of the things you've got to bear in mind is our climb performance is now quite dramatically affected. We're still looking for 135 knots. That still gives us our best rate of climb, because that's based not on your engine power, that's based on the aerodynamics of the wing. So basically what it's saying is at 135 knots your lift drag ratio on the wing is the best it can be for climbing. So, but what you'll notice is we have a vastly reduced rate of climb. So we can actually climb a little bit more. Whilst I've been talking about that, we've gained 10 knots of speed. And you can see our rate of climb is coming back up nicely. Okay, as we're climbing as well, you'll notice the manifold pressure is dropping. So what we can do as we climb is we can introduce a little bit more throttle. Again, that comes down to the air density. I mentioned that earlier. It's the air density that's pushing the air into the engine. So there we go, we're climbing, we're nicely away. You know, at this point you would have nothing to do really with the aircraft. We're going to climb up to 5,000 feet, so what I'll do is I'll cut it now, I'll just edit the video, and I'll see you again at 5,000 feet. So welcome back again, guys. We're just about level at 5,000 feet. I'm just trimming the aircraft a little bit. And what we're going to do initially is we're going to go through some of the slow speed handling. You can see the master warnings come on now because of the gear, so we'll just cancel that. And then now what I've got is a situation where if there's any new warnings, then the main master warning will come on and I will know about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some slow speed work. We're going to do initially a clean stall, then we're going to do a dirty stall with approach flaps and the gear down. Now the clean stall, I'm expecting nothing too dramatic. There's no oddities to the wings, and as long as it's balanced we shouldn't suffer from wing drop, but you never know with these things. You know, in real life there's a lot of things that variables impact it in terms of even the weather, the wing rigging, because there's no such thing as a perfect aircraft unless you're talking about the Westland Sea King, which is as close to perfection as you can get. It's the only perfect aircraft ever designed. Now as we're approaching the stall, what you'll get hopefully is some indicator. Oh good, got some buffet. You can see the angle of attack indicator there went into the red, and just holding it into the stall, big nose drop. Release the cause of the stall, which in this case is the back pressure. Bring in a little bit of throttle, re-establish a climb, make sure you're not pulling too hard, otherwise what you'll do is go into a secondary stall. And we lost quite a bit of altitude there because we delayed and talked through it. We lost about 1,000 feet, 1,200 feet. So with that in mind, what we're going to do now is as we climb up, we're going to not make sure we don't go too fast. We're going to put a stage of flap down because we're in the white arc, and we're going to put the gear down as well. Gear limiting speed I think is 122. So what we're going to do now as we climb is we're going to take the power off. Now there's a good chance we'll get wing drop on this because we've got a dirty airframe and we've also got the flaps down, and the we're going to have a little bit of power on as well. So what's happening is the air's corkscrewing over the aircraft, which gives slightly different aerodynamic handling characteristics. And then in addition what we've got is we've got gear out flaps, which give a different dynamics depending on the angle of attack that's approaching them. And we'll see what happens now. I am anticipating we'll probably get a wing drop of some description, just by virtue of having power on more than anything else. So let's keep raising it. We would anticipate our stall to be somewhere near 60 knots, so let's just try and balance it. There's the buffet coming in, the angle of attack, and actually it's quite a placid stall. Okay, stick forwards, break the stall, gear and flaps away as quickly as we can because we don't want to bust the speed for those. And yeah, That's really quite placid, quite docile, considering the performance of the aircraft. Quite happy with that. We only lost about 600 feet doing that, so it's not too bad, but that's because we were quick to respond. If we hadn't been so quick, then obviously we would have gone far, far greater in terms of the descent. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a spin, 5,500 feet. Warnings flashing. We will cancel that master warning because obviously what we are aware of is what we're doing is basically a semi-aerobatic manoeuvre now. There's the buffet, and let's just... Oh, it's not really keen on a spin, is it? Look at that, very nose down. Opposite rudder to come out. Speed's building, so don't pull too hard. And we lost the best part of 2,000 feet there in a two-turn, probably 2.5 turn spin. It's not keen to spin, doesn't really want to do it. Now the difficulty with that is quite often when an aircraft's not keen to spin, it can also be in a situation where it's not keen to come out of a spin. So it didn't really like that very much. So we've been flying away from Coventry pretty much all this time. What we're going to do is we're going to climb up to 5,000 feet and... whoa, 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 whoa. We haven't even got an angle of attack for a stall there, so I wonder what's going on there. That must be a weather issue. Let's having a look. T's and P's are all good. No red lights, no warnings. Wow, look at that rate of climb. Something's going on here. 4,000 feet a minute. Whoa, it's the weather. We must have hit some really nasty turbulence here. Really nasty. We don't like that. Okay, so this thing, oh god, all of a sudden, look at that. We've got 3,000 feet a minute rate of descent. We've got 1,000 feet a minute rate of climb. God, the weather's having a bit of a nightmare with us there. Okay, not a problem. What we'll do is we'll get ourselves back down. Bruntingthorpe just passing through the nose there. A very long runway. I think it was a Cold War bomber base originally. Now you can see what's happening with the... Whoa! Whoa! Watch VNE. Whoa, that wasn't nice. I have got active sky next on, so I don't know what's happening in terms of the weather, but gear warning. Whoa, 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 whoa. We're going to go down. Get out of here. Just watch VNE. We do have our air brakes. Let's pop those bad boys out so we don't exceed VNE. Bit of a rumble as they come out. I'm not keen at being up at this altitude in this location. Something's going on with the weather. That was horrendous. That was absolutely horrendous. I've never encountered that before in FSX, but then it is active sky next we've got. So what we'll do is we'll get down to 5,000 feet, we'll plug in the autopilot and see how we get on then. Start to bring the vertical speed back into line. Try and get ourselves level at 5,000 feet. Now that's interesting. It doesn't want to level. Gears up, flaps up. Oh right, speed brakes out. That's why. Orange caption warning us of that. Okay. Autopilot. Let's plug in autopilot, and we'll do altitude, and it should just hold the lateral guide as it should be doing. And then what we can do now is we can just tune in our heading bug and we'll get it set up. That was horrendous. I've never experienced that before in FSX. Okay, so let's just plug it onto heading. Prop fully up, so don't forget rev up, and then we're going to go and do our top speed. Now, whilst we're doing this, we did mention our true airspeed. So outside air is 5. We're at 5,000 feet, so we can go over here. And what we can do is we can see the 5 on this. So this is your altitude, and this is your indicator in terms of your outside air temperature. So we go 5 to 5, and then what we're going to find out is we're going to find out just how fast this thing's going when it trues out in terms of its airspeed. So we're going maxi chat, we've got everything going, and we'll see how we get on. That was some quite crazy turbulence there. That really was horrendous. What's the G meter saying as a result of that? Whoa, look at the G meter. Look at that. I think we would have broken the wings normally. Plus 8.5, minus 5, and minus 5 is the limit. In fact, that's minus 6. That's the limit. That would hurt. That would really, really hurt in real life. That would be horrendous. Okay, so let's look at what's happening with the true airspeed. This thing should true out at about between 230 and 240. Really, that's what they suggest in the figures. So we're still increasing speed, but you can see we've gone past 220, 230. We're heading towards 240. I think it's 238, 239. I think is the speed that it would generally have. So there we go. We've done slow speed handling. We've done high speed. See what we can get. And what we can get is pretty darned fast. Now this thing is aerobatic, as you've just seen. Oh man, that was crazy. Coventry's just down in the right 1 o'clock at the minute. So what we'll do is we'll do a little bit of aerobatics and see how we get on. So you'd normally do your height, your Hazel checks, hatches and harnesses, altitude, etc. All that lot. I'm not going to bother with it, because we're in a sim. You know, let's be honest, we're in a sim. So let's go for a loop. Let's get plenty of speed. We're going to pull up and we're going to go for about a 4G initial pull, 4 to 5G. Make sure we've got the ball balanced as best we can going over the top. Speed's coming off rapidly as we come over the top. Bring the throttle back so that we're not accelerating towards the ground. Didn't quite get over the top. Warnings, gear warning, which is expected. So, you know, it's a loop. Let's do a barrel roll, see how we get on with that. Get the airspeed up. We'll probably do about 210 for the barrel roll. This isn't an aerobatic aircraft in the same manner as, say, a Pitts Special, but it's certainly quite adequate for doing some gentle aerobatics. You'll have to excuse the dog in the background. I've got no idea why it's going ballistic, but you know, such as dogs do. Commentary's round on the right. So in terms of its manoeuvrability, very crisp. It trims out very nicely for me. It depends on how you have your controls set up, I would assume, but handling wise it is quite sporty. It does do a lot of things. Still got the gear warning. We'll just get rid of that for the minute. And what you can see is when you do your handling or your manoeuvring, it snaps into a good position, like so. Snap, crisp handling. You know, you can pull, do a nice roll. Rudder's got good authority. It's nice and stable, actually, to be fair. So you know, I've got no issues about the stability of this thing. I haven't got much in the way of information about the actual aircraft as a whole in terms of its handling and flight dynamics. The difficulty is that because they're experimental stroke kit build, what one person decides as an acceptable sort of trait, other people aren't so hot on. So where's Coventry gone? It's out there somewhere. EGBE. Oh, there it is, just over there. There is a very odd handling trait with this thing, and I shall show you it now. And this would scare the living daylights out of me. With a lot of aerobatic aircraft, you can do a thing called a snap roll. Now, when this thing snap rolls, it doesn't half go for it, and I'll show you what I mean. And this would scare the living daylights out of me in real life. So what we're going to do is we're going to nose up, and then we're going to put full aileron deflection in and full rudder into turn, and watch what happens with this. So nose up, and then over we go. And then as we try and come out, it accelerates into it. It's amazing. It just, I don't know quite why it does it, but we lost a lot of altitude doing that. But having said that, it brings us nicely down to circuit altitude. So Birmingham would be screaming at us at the minute, because at the end of the day we would have been in their airspace, controlled airspace, for the approach to Birmingham Airport. Let's get the speed down and bring out the flaps now. Not the flaps, the speed brake. Now, one of the useful things now is if you look at the HSI, we've got our yellow indicator which gives us the runway orientation. Master warning's on again, so just increase the throttle slightly to get rid of it. 140 knots. We'll just let it descend a little bit down to probably about 1300 feet. Can't see the airfield now, but we know roughly where it is, and we know our orientation compared to it, because a combination of the GPS and the HSI is helping us out here. So we're going to do a great big long curved approach onto finals. Bring ourselves down a little bit more, we don't want to go too low. Let the altitude just bleed off a bit. Did you see how the speeds climbed again? Crazy, 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 crazy. Okay, so landing checks will... everything's ready to go. Harnesses fastened, props fully forward, mixture's fully rich. So at this speed, we're not quite at a speed where we can extend the gear. We'll let the speed bleed off a bit. One of the things that a lot of people do is they come up with little tricksy sayings as they fly around. A good one for finals is red, green, blue. So you'd be looking for red, mixture fully forward, green, gear down, and blue, prop fully forward. So that's a good one to have at the back of your mind. Red, green, blue. So as we come back down towards 1300 feet, we're just going to arrest that rate of descent a little bit. Trim a little bit. We don't want to stop the descent completely at the moment. That's Birmingham, I think, in front of us, according to the GPS anyway. Or is it? No, that's Coventry. So we want to go out to the left a bit here. Watch our descent. We're aiming for 1300 feet. So if we get anywhere near it, then I'll be a happy bunny. But we've got to trim with this thing. Got to trim. It does want to roar up and down. It's quite sensitive for its altitude in terms of playing around. Now, did I have... I think I did. Yeah, I had the Charlie Tango set up. Look over there on the right. What's your altitude, Richard? So the yellow double-headed arrow, once that gets round towards 050, we know that we're pretty much there for lining up with Coventry. Now I'm going to take the power off completely. So we've got one red, three whites there. So we're a little bit high. We'll get our rate of descent going. We will put our spoilers out. Now I'm going to come in slightly high because you can see the tree line short of the threshold's quite significant. First stage of flaps going out now. 122 gear limiting speed, so the gear can come out as well. What we'll do is we'll start to decelerate very quickly now, but with the gear and the first stage of flaps out, you can get rid of the spoilers. Full flaps, even though we've got 4 whites. As I say, you can see the tree line. It's an appalling line up onto finals there. You can see the tree line comes right up to the threshold, so we're going to keep high. We've got a lovely long runway. There's a lot of people get really excitable about 2 things. First off is landing on the centre line. The second is a real greaser of a landing. Well, not a problem doing a greaser here, but if you hold off your landing, wind's a little bit from the right as we found when we took off. If you hold off your landing for any great length of time, you're using up runway, and at the end of the day, it's the runway we want to land on, not the grass at the end of the runway, not the buildings that we'll plough into at the end. Now again, the approach speed is generally about 80 knots with this, 75-80 knots according to the book. I don't tend to fly it at that level. You can see with the trees below us now why I don't fly the 2 reds, 2 whites. Don't forget when we took off, it was excitable to get off the ground at 90, but it really wasn't interested at 65. So with that in mind, again, what I'm going to do here is just keep the speed up a little. We've got plenty of runway. We're not doing short field landing here. Nice 2 reds, 2 whites. We're established on centre line. Drifting slightly right, so let's drop the left wing a little bit. 3 reds, not a problem. We're over the threshold. Take the power off and let it just settle. Nose on the horizon. There we go, and we're down. So, lovely handling aircraft, absolutely gorgeous to fly. See how long it takes us to stop. Now that we're all on the ground, we're going to turn around and taxi back, and we're going to clean ourselves up. Mrs. Fnar Fnar. Nice nose wheel bounce, notice, as we come off the brakes again, removing the compression of the oleo, nose oleo. So lights will leave on as required, flaps are coming up, trim set to 0, radio would go to ground frequency at this point. Next thing to do is shut down. However, what we are going to do is we're going to take the fuel boost pump off. There's no need to have that on. We can turn most of our avionics off now, there's no real need to have these on. I'm not going to bother taxiing back to some hard standing thing. There's no point doing that just wastes time. Okay, so let's pull ourselves to a halt here. Parking brake needs to go on. Batteries checked, avionics are all off, with the master switch for the avionics going off. Throttle's idle, fuel boost pump is off, mixture going to idle cut off. And when the engine stops after rattling around, we can turn the magnetos off, cancel the master warning as we go. These are still flashing obviously because the engine's off. And finally what we're going to do is we're going to turn the battery and the alternator off. That's it, guys. In fact, we turn these lights off as well. Probably a good idea to do that. Yeah, that's it, guys. What can I say other than this is an absolutely fantastic aircraft, really worth the money. I mean, £17, it's an absolute steal. So with that in mind, I've got no hesitation in recommending it. Beyond that, what I would say is that really there's very few GA aircraft which can beat this for the price. Beautiful to fly, really nice, crisp handling. It is semi-aerobatic. It certainly does general aerobatics not too bad. It's not a pitch special. But more importantly, for the type of aircraft it is, it's wickedly fast. It makes an excellent IFR tourer, particularly with the avionics it's got. Even though it's the default GPS for FSX, it's still adequate for what you're doing. You know, and I think at £17 you can't really argue with that, and you can't really grumble. So if you like the video, guys, please don't forget to tick like, share or subscribe, and I shall speak to you all soon.